last couple of years, and we'll be addressing that issue later this evening in our meeting going on later tonight. So I do thank Ashley for her contribution over the last couple of years, almost 2 years in our term now, and we'll be going forward this evening as we normally would be. I'll start off with the land acknowledgement, being that the City of Beaumont recognizes the histories, languages, and cultures of all First Peoples of this land, whether they be of First Nations, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich vibrant communities across the land. As we gather here in Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis Nation, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people and have ongoing responsibilities to protect and honor the treaty, the inherent rights of the people and the land. With that, we have two proclamations this evening. The first one being World Suicide Prevention Day, September 10th, 2023. Whereas globally, an estimated 1 million people die each year by suicide, one person every 40 seconds. And whereas suicide is the second leading cause of death among youth and youth adults 15 to 34 years of age, and whereas 1/3 of all deaths by suicide are among people 45 to 59 years of age. And whereas social stigma and lack of support resources often silence those suffering from mental illness, as well as family members who are seeking to recover from a loss of a loved one. And whereas Beaumont residents are encouraged and invited to be part of the growing conversation around suicide prevention in order to better support those who need it. Now, therefore, be resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danyluk, do hereby proclaim September 10th, 2023 as World Suicide Prevention Day in the City of Beaumont, Alberta, dated 5th September 2023. Our second proclamation is Probus Month, October. Whereas it is recognized that the Leduc Region Probus Club has a vital purpose, that being to stimulate thought, learning, interest, and participation in activities at a time in life when it is easy to become complacent and self-centered. And whereas the Leduc Region Probus Club is made up of retired or semi-retired professional, business, or like-minded responsible persons from the local community. And whereas the Leduc Region Probus Club provides ongoing Zoom or meeting activities to those residents from the region who in retirement appreciate and value opportunities to meet others in similar circumstances and a similar level of interest. And whereas the City of Beaumont encourages and supports the development of fraternal associations, service club, and other volunteer associations, now therefore be resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danyluk, do hereby proclaim October 2023 as Probus Month in the City of Beaumont, Alberta, dated 5th of September 2023. Next on our agenda is to adopt the agenda this evening. Madam Clerk, are there any changes to this evening's agenda, please? I have your mic there. There you go.
Thank you, Mayor. Administration does have one addition to the agenda, and that is item 6.3, the City of Beaumont 2023 municipal by-election update.
Thank you. Any further additions to the agenda? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, will you please put a motion on the screen to adopt the agenda as amended? Member of Council willing to move that adoption of the agenda? Councilor McCook.
So moved, your Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion. Council, seeing none, would you please vote on the motion to accept the amended agenda? That carries unanimously. Thank you. As you can also see, members of the audience and in person, we have moved Councilor McCook to my immediate left to sort of balance the room a little bit at the front, not leaving Councillor Barnhart totally by herself on the left side of the room this evening. So we didn't want you to feel too lonely there, Kathy. Next on the agenda is the open forum. Madam Clerk, do you have any guests in open forum this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. We do have one open forum presentation. And here be Shane from Qualico representing UDI.
Shane, please join us at the table if you could, please. Just pull the mic down. It's very directional. Speak right into the microphone. If you could state your name, and you have 5 minutes, sir, to present to council. Welcome to council.
Okay, I'm here to speak to item 6.2 tonight. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Shane Gerein. I am a professional planner currently employed as a senior project manager at Qualico Communities here in Edmonton. But tonight I am representing the Urban Development Institute in my role as chair of the Beaumont Working Group. For those unaware, UDI is a nonprofit, member-driven organization representing leaders in the real estate industry and communities throughout the Edmonton metropolitan region. Our members are development companies and the professionals involved in our industry, including planners, surveyors, landscape architects, engineers, contractors, finance managers, and of course, municipalities who regulate and set policy related to land use. I'd like to start by thanking you for the opportunity to speak this evening on the report that is now in front of council that essentially identifies some of the pressures that compact or denser forms of development have on urban municipalities. In this particular circumstance, the overarching theme is the impact density has on driveways and parking. And of course, the report ultimately makes several recommendations to address some of these pressures. I do want to commend the work administration has put in to prepare the report, and I am here to go on the record stating that UDI is generally supportive of the recommendations for amendments to the land use bylaw that are being put forth. And I do say generally supportive because there are a couple very minor clarifications and or modifications to the recommendations we would propose moving forward. And I know, having worked with administration for several years, that we'll find a way to find common ground. First modification we would propose is to item number 1, which is addressing street congestion. And there's an option number 3 that proposes the submission of driveway locations with a subdivision application. We do believe this is a detailed design item that should be reviewed during the engineering drawing review process. And in fact, this is already occurring as a requirement in Beaumont and most other urban municipalities. There are 2 particular reasons we would recommend this approach. First, this level of detail would only serve to complicate subdivision approvals, and decisions on subdivisions should not be impacted by parking or driveway locations. They are dictated by lot sizes allowable in the zoning bylaw. And more importantly, detailed design is the process where administration reviews conflicts with street furnishings such as utility boxes, street lights, parking, and trees. So driveways are currently required to be shown on engineering drawings in accordance with section, and I'm not making this up, it's section 1.2.3.4 of the city's general design standards. These details are details of street furnishings are not really known when a subdivision application is submitted. And all of these design elements have to move around to make a subdivision work. So I think the status quo is an effective way to confirm driveway locations, and there would be limited value in adding driveway locations at the subdivision stage of development. Another recommendation that we would like to work with administration to clarify is item 1, option 4, where the intent is to limit dwellings with front driveways to one side of the street and require the other side to have rear lane access for 0 lot line development. Now, we do support prohibiting or restricting front drive 0 lot line development across the street from other front access or front drive 0 lot line development. So if this is the intent, then we are supportive. If the intent is to restrict front access 0 lot line across from other front drive products like standard single family homes, then we do foresee some limitations and would like to work with administration to find other alternatives, which could include some of the alternatives mentioned in the report. At the end of the day, we can't deny that compact development forms represent a change to our urban communities in the region. Not everyone will be happy about it, and I think we all agree that this change is rooted in principles for responsible and sustainable growth that uses our land and resources more efficiently for the benefit of current and future generations. We have shared goals to ensure affordability, housing diversity, to enable more families to own a home. We want to better utilize the infrastructure we put in the ground to service more people. To be environmental stewards, to utilize land better, and reduce our carbon footprint, to ensure emergency and recreational services are utilized and bring people closer to these important community amenities. In closing, UDI looks forward to continuing our collaboration with council and administration to work towards the 6 themes presented in the municipal development plan, including healthy, vibrant communities, responsible development, effective movement of people and goods, environmental stewardship, economic strength, and safety and emergency management. That concludes my notes. Thank you.
Mr. Bryan, appreciate your presentation. Any questions, members of council, for our presenter? Councilor McCook, Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Shane, for coming and presenting this evening. When you spoke about the driveway applications and them being shown in the planning stages on the engineering drawings versus the subdivision stage, you said it will complicate subdivision approvals. Can you kind of explain a little bit how so?
Sure. Yeah, I think that when a subdivision application is made, there's a number of parameters that the subdivision authority is charged with looking at to make sure that the land is suitable for the intended use of that subdivision, right? So when we look at a zoning bylaw, it essentially lays the parameters of a subdivision, how wide your lot can be, how shallow the depth might be able to be, and what can be built on the lot. By bringing in a consideration for parking, that just adds to the list of things that really probably don't add value in the big picture. Being that should it be something the subdivision authority uses to potentially refuse an application, right? I don't think that's something we want to see happening where we're adding this to a plan. And where do you draw the line, right? We look at engineering drawings so that we can establish street furniture locations for things like power pedestals, tree locations, driveway locations. We look at those at the engineering drawing stage. So this is really where things move in order to make things work. Engineers do have to be creative within the space that they have. And I do think that that's the appropriate place to be looking at driveway locations as opposed to at the subdivision application point.
Okay,
Hopefully that
perfect.
makes sense.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Grine. Appreciate that. Councilman Swain, followed by Councilman Newkirk. Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, thanks for a great overview last week as well. Really beneficial for those who are able to attend. Councillor McCook spoke a bit about the driver locations during the subdivision stage. I'll save my questions for administration as when we get to that. You talked about a bit of a tweak, the offsetting driveway access for front access and rear access. So if I understood you correctly, your recommendation from UDI perspective is if you've got a zero lot line facing a zero lot line, then that makes sense. But if you've got I'm going to use the word regular because you know how familiar I am with this type of language. And you can laugh at that as much as you want. If you've got a regular plot plan and a zero lot line, then you're saying that we don't need to put that instance in there.
Yeah, I think actually what I'm saying is if you have front access zero lot line across the street from front access zero lot line, it would be typical in the region to not allow that or not permit zeros across from zeros when they have front access.
Yeah.
Zeros could be across the street from other zeros if there was one side of that street had lane access.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is if the intent of this is to restrict zero lot line front attached from front attached standard product with 2 side yard setbacks, then we'd want to look at some different options potentially to enable that to still occur. And that would be a typical approach that we see elsewhere in the region.
Okay. So, and effectively, we saw some of these products on Friday where they were kind of offset and you could see, so one side of the street where you could have parking on one side of the street effectively.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of different design elements that can be utilized. And we saw a lot of them on Friday, but there are alternatives we could also use to help mitigate some of the pressures for on-street parking.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'll leave it there and say once we get into the meat of it. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilman Newkirk. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to continue down that path just a little bit further because I'm unclear on how a decision one way or another tonight might affect what you're suggesting. So what we saw on our tour was front driveway and then zero lot line product on the other side, which allowed parking, east, west across from the driveways. And that seemed like a reasonable thing to do. And it alleviates a lot of pressures, and that's, just planning what goes where. But if we were front across from front, then effectively the street parking is horribly limited because you also have crossings and, utilities and 1.5 meter limits and stuff. So the intent would be to not have that situation. But so what I'm unclear on is a decision tonight if we went with what was presented as in proposing or prohibit opposing front residential driveways. Can you just speak through your thoughts on that once more?
Yeah, well, I
I'm
think
just trying to
that-
paint the picture on the decision one way or another and how that affects what your opinion
Yeah,
is
so
right now.
for me too, it's tough to see what comes out of tonight's discussion at a regular council meeting. Is I assume what the process is, that a motion is made by a member of council directing administration to evaluate or begin the process to make these changes to the zoning bylaw. I think what I'm saying is that there are some elements that we want to discuss a little bit further during that process. So we're hopeful that if a motion is made, that there is outreach with the community or, you know, in my case, the development industry, to make sure that we're getting this right and that we're looking at all the options that are available in terms of, you know, maybe a jurisdictional scan of how everybody is doing things in the region. And, you know, obviously reassessing what's tolerable to Beaumont and Beaumont City Council as well as administration. So hopefully that kind of.
Yeah,
it's-
that adds a little
Yeah.
context to it. Yeah. And the whole purpose of the first one, and to be honest, a lot of the feedback back that we've gotten is actually on parking, right? So the lens is like how to make parking better in the future, right? And so there's a couple of conversations that'll happen tonight, but that's the lens as I see it for, you know, that first piece tonight. So yeah, thank you for coming in and laying your opinion out and representing UDI. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Grime. Appreciate that. And the tour last week helped us visualize some of the different housing styles that are available. So we look for it. Much appreciated. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is consent agenda. Madam Clerk, would you put the consent agenda on the screen, please? If you could read through what's on the consent, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Administration is putting forward the following consent agendas that council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Regular council meeting minutes, July 11th, 2023, 5.2 special council meeting, July 17th, 2023, and 5.3 special council meetings of July 18th, 2023.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Discussion on the motion. Or sorry, is there a member of council willing to move the motion? Councillor Barnhart,
Yes, Mayor, I'll move the motion. Can I just say so moved?
good enough for me. Appreciate that. Discussion from council. Seeing none, council, please vote on the consent agenda. That also passed unanimously. Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is 6.1, request for council review Municipal Government Act, Section 545, 546. Ms. Bourget, will you be speaking to this agenda item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, council. I'm Sandy Bajaya, the Director of Legal and Legislative Services, and I'll be speaking very briefly to this item. On July 19th, the city issued 2 enforcement orders to the Villitards property pertaining to sections 545 and 546 of the Municipal Government Act. Through their legal counsel, the Villitards appealed these orders, which means that council is the body that conducts the review. After setting the date for the review for today's meeting, the Villitards and the city agreed to attempt to negotiate a resolution to this matter. In order for those negotiations to have sufficient time to take place, the city and the Villitards require some additional time. In light of this change in circumstances, Legal and Legislative Services consulted with the parties and asked them if they were agreeable to asking council to postpone the review until October 10th. LLS also confirmed the availability of the parties for that date. Finally, we also consulted with the affected parties who wished to speak to this matter and confirmed that they were open to the postponement. For these reasons, and with the consent of the parties, we are asking council to postpone the review by way of motion. That is the end of my very brief presentation, and of course, I'm always happy to take council's questions.
Thank you, Ms. Bajaya. Any questions from Ms. Bajaya's presentation before I ask for the motion to be put on the screen? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, motion on the screen, please. And I'll make the motion that the request for council review Municipal Government Act, Section 545 and 546 orders be postponed until the October 10, 2023 regular council meeting. Discussion on the motion from members of council. Seeing none, council, would you please vote on the motion before you? That carries unanimously. Thank you, council. Thank you, Ms. Bajia. Next on our agenda this evening is 6.2, Land Use Bylaw Report and Recommendations. I believe Ms. Raymond, you'll be speaking, and Mr. Hippicus, you'll be speaking to this evening. I think your microphone, I got 15. Is that you?
Yeah, so, yes, we'll just go up to the front here and.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
It's terrific, thanks.
Microphone will be on, gentlemen. Please make sure you speak right into it. It's very directional. And have it close to you, Ken, and make it nice and clear. Thank you very much. And please begin when you're ready. Oh, here you go. I got her on for you.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm just checking to see if we have our slides up. Huh? Oh, it's should look like that.
It's the PowerPoint one.
It is a PowerPoint, yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. My name is Sean Hipkiss. I'm the Manager of Development Services. As well, I have my colleague here today, David Shore with ISL. He's the lead for developing the report that we're here to talk about today. This evening's presentation summarizes the findings in the LUB amendment report and provides you with recommendations based on 8 listed items from council meeting on January the 24th, 2023. Oh,
Right ahead.
slight pause. There we go. The agenda this evening will provide background information on the concepts of land use bylaw and how it works, what guides the land use bylaw, some history of the land use bylaw, high level summary of the, and I'll use the word LUB, so I'm not using land use bylaw all the time, amendments reported, report was created, administration summary and recommendations of the LUB report and the next steps. As a quick overview, our land use bylaw was developed using the following rationale: to promote walkability, alternative transportation, to facilitate compliance with the Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Growth Plan, provide clarity on site and building design standards, support more efficient land use of land, implement the MDP and our strategic plans, have a user-friendly bylaw with simplified processes and language, to have a land use bylaw that is efficient and clear, and encourage innovation and high quality of development through flexible and objective standards, as well as to establish transparent and consistent decision-making framework. The next slide, please. The land use bylaw is more than just a zoning bylaw. It is the regulatory document providing the rules on how land can be developed in Beaumont. The LUB is the regulatory tool that implements and codifies the MDP. And this version is focused on delivering the 6 overarching policy theme areas contained within the MDP. Specifically, the MDP includes requirements for aspects like walkability, residential density targets, diverse housing, mixed uses, neighborhood services, connectivity to public realm improvements, and economic development, all of which have been addressed through our current LUB. Our LUB bylaw is guided by some overarching and fundamental plans as shown above in the inverted triangle. They are as follows. I'm going to use the word MRGP, which is our Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Growth Plan, North Saskatchewan Plan, our MDP, Municipal Development Plan, and area structure plans and area redevelopment plans. Then from there, our LUB guides subdivision plans and how communities are developed. Once subdivision plans are approved, development permits are applied for and approved, all on the same overarching criteria. The reason that, so basically with this, and I guess the takeaway from this is we have a lot of plans above the land use bylaw that we have to follow certain level of criteria, which I've listed out. As well, the land use bylaw underneath the subdivision and development permits provides that same level of criteria to follow through. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to discuss how we ended up here today with a brief history within the last year of the LUB discussion, starting off on January 25th, 2022. Council requested administration to prepare a report on the land use bylaw, specifically on feasibility and impacts of adding additional parking restrictions for business uses and additional dwelling units in the current residential zones. The feasibility and impact of limiting the number of dwelling units per parcel to maximum of 2 suites for single-family homes where no detached garage is included, and a maximum of 3 suites for single-family homes where detached garage is included. An overview of the current standards for the home-based businesses and minor and major, including the types of business typically in each category. Then on November the 22nd, administration brought forward the report called City of Beaumont Land Use Bylaw Engagement, developed by Intelligent Futures, which then stemmed the conversation in the committee of whole meetings between November to December of 2022 meetings, where the committee of whole recommended that council provided 8 listed items for January the 24th, 2023 council meeting. The council meeting on January the 24th, 2023 requested to address the options. These are the options that will be the core fundamentals of this report that you're seeing here today. Administration prepared a report on options implicated related to addressing congestion to street parking and encouraging parking in garages and alleviate street congestion, limiting additional dwelling units, for front attached garage product to 1, limiting additional dwelling units to rear detached garage product to 2, requiring 1B a garage suite, disallowing 0 lot line homes, disallowing further tiny homes or mobile homes, adjusting the amount of parking to additional dwelling units to 1 parking stall per bedroom, and limiting the number of business-related vehicles allowed for home-based businesses. Then on February the 23rd, ISL was awarded by administration the RFP to conduct a study based on the 8 listed items that I've just listed in the previous slide from the January 24th, 2023 motion. Here today is David Shore, who will discuss the study presented before you called Proposed LUB Amendments. Thanks, David. You can take it away.
Thanks, Sean. Good evening, Mayor, Council, Administration, and those in attendance. My name is David Shore from ISL Engineering and Land Services. I'm a senior planner, and our team at ISL assisted the development services team at Beaumont prepare the report. This evening, I'd like to provide Council with 5 items, a review of the context leading up to the project, the council motion that Sean just reviewed as an overview, talk about the project timeline and the tasks we committed or completed between January and August of 2023, and a review of the recommendations for item 1, 2, and 5, as well as present a summary of the overall series of recommendations that are contained within the report. So as council recalls, in April 2019, council gave third reading to Beaumont's LUB. The LUB was approved shortly after council approved the municipal development plan in March 2019. Those documents are both important, as you know. The MDP sets a clear vision for where the city needs to be within 25 years. The LUB implements the vision of the municipal development plan by describing what can be developed and where it can be developed. In the metropolitan region, both documents, even still 4 years later, are seen as innovative. They're seen as innovative because of what I call the 4 whys. They deal with resiliency, diversity, inclusivity, and prosperity. The MDP, along with council's strategic plan, describe Beaumont as a city that provides a range of housing types for different household incomes, is compact, consists of efficiently planned neighborhoods, and designed for a multimodal transportation system. So overall, your MDP and LUB are intended to do that. To ensure that vision is achieved, council, with great foresight, conducted an engagement with residents in the spring and summer of 2022 to see how the land use bylaw was performing in achieving that directive that council had in its MDP and strategic plan. In summary, residents had comments about parking, additional dwelling units, density, congestion, noise, some other land use bylaw related nuisances. In response to those comments, council recognized the need and acted. And in January of this year, you provided 8 items for administration to review. And those items are ones that Sean reviewed in the previous slide and are shown here. To review these 8 items, our team at ISL worked with administration over an 8-month period to complete 3 phases. Phase 1 occurred in the winter of this year, and we conducted a document review and comparative research to identify those 8 items against the alignment of the MDP. Phase 2 occurred during early summer, and we met with developers, builders, and home-based business owners to discuss those 8 items and potential solutions to them. Phase 3 occurred this summer, and we prepared a report for administration's review, which is included in your council package for tonight's meeting as attachment 1. Over the next 3 slides, I'll describe each of those phases in a little bit more detail so you understand what we did to come up with the recommendations that were put forward. In phase 1, we buried ourselves in documents that apply to the city of Beaumont. We conducted a document review and comparative research, and by considering the Intelligent Futures report, which essentially described extensive engagement with the community, it described resident concerns, but it also demonstrated to administration and ISL that we needed to talk to the development industry about those 8 items and produce recommendations to address the concerns. We also conducted an extensive review of the city's strategies and policies to determine if council's 8 items were in conflict. We submitted that review in March 2023, and we considered all of the plans that Sean identified in that inverted triangle. Those included the growth plan, the intermunicipal planning framework with Leduc and the city of Edmonton, council's strategic plan, all of your statutory plans, as well as additional policy plans like the transportation master plan, social master plan, environmental master plan, age-friendly strategy, etc. But we focused heavily on the municipal development plan and land use bylaw. For the land use bylaw, we looked at the 3 residential districts, being the conventional neighborhood district, the integrated district, and the mature neighborhood district. Through our analysis, we identified that the CN district, or the conventional neighborhood district, was the focus of attention because it affects the significant part of Beaumont and where most of the additional dwelling units and home-based businesses are located. And those are typically in the new neighborhoods. In the document, the location of ADUs and home-based businesses are shown on maps 1 and map 2. So in summary, the city's policy documents like the ASPs and NSPs, the Transportation Master Plan and the Social Master Plan, all support council's vision for a resilient, diverse, inclusive, and prosperous Beaumont. So given the breadth of the engagement that was undertaken during the 2022 work by Intelligent Futures in the city, actually, I'll switch to the next slide. Phase 2 of our project involved public engagement. And the intent here was to consult with and involve interested parties that would come up with solutions for the 8 items that council proposed. We discussed additional dwelling units, zero lot line housing, which Sean will refer to later as single yard housing. Given the breadth of engagement that was done at that stage, we conducted a focused engagement where we met with local land developers, builders, and home-based business owners. The city sent out 60 invitations for interviews for those that were seen as being interested parties. And in response to those invitations and requests for interviews, we met with 9 people who were interested in coming up with those solutions. Those folks represented local developers and builders, the Edmonton Regional Home Builders Association and the UDI, and 2 landowners and home-based business owners. A compilation of those interviews verbatim was provided to administration in July of 2023. In summary, land developers, builders, and home-based business owners told us that they had mixed opinions on solving parking issues, but were unified on ADUs and zero lot line housing. For resolution of parking issues, they recommended more transit. One stated that the hardest part for builders and developers is the lack of transit. One vehicle families need transit. Transit will reduce parking issues and is a selling point for communities. And of course, we're aware that the city is working on a transit strategy and can consider or is considering other parking related solutions that are presented in this report. For ADUs, they were advised garage and basement suites were very desirable and in demand by consumers. All developers and builders said that zero lot line housing is the hottest housing product. Those comments fit well with Council's strategic plan, the MDP and the LUB, which see again Beaumont as the resilient, diverse, innovative, inclusive, and providing a range of housing types. So the third phase of the project involved preparing a report. And the report contains a number of items. It contains each of council's 8 items, and we'll refer to those as items as we go through this for clarity. It also provides 20 options to those 8 items. So there's a number of options that are available to council. And they're intended to address the concerns expressed about parking and density and ADUs. Council can select one of those options, all 20 of them, or any combination of them. That was the intent. They were looked at independently. The options that were presented were based on experiences in other municipalities around Beaumont, existing MDP policies, an interpretation of what council wanted when they put forward this motion, a consideration of the feedback we received from developers, builders, and residents, current best practices in planning, and our professional judgment. Now, to grade the impact of each of those 20 options, we created an implications table, which is shown on this slide. For each option, we asked ourselves a series of 11 questions, which again are shown in the table in orange, on the orange part of the table. If a yes answer was given to any question, that option received a check mark. If a no answer was given, a check mark was also placed in the table. The more no's an option received, the less impact that option had. So if you had 11 no's, it would receive a high score, but it meant less impact. We also provided a cost to implement each option. These costs were based on the creation of communications program for the city to share the news about the decision provided by council. It considered a legal review as well as the preparation of any changes that could be needed to be made to the MDP or land use bylaw. And we also provided an estimated implementation time for each of the options. And they range from 2 months to 8 months, depending on the amount of contentiousness or complexity of those changes. So on this next slide and the next three, I'll focus on the key recommendations that were made out of our report. And I was asked to focus on the findings of 3 recommendations, that being for item 1, item 2, and item 5. Item 1 dealing with parking, item 2 dealing with ADUs, and item 5 dealing with zero lot line housing. Item 1, as I mentioned, deals with parking and alleviating street congestion. And during the LUB engagement in 2022, residents advised council and administration that developing neighborhoods do not provide adequate street parking, which results in on-street parking and congestion. These neighborhoods are typically zoned CN, and the primary issue for on-street parking congestion, whether in Beaumont or throughout the metropolitan region, can be any one of the following. Neighborhoods are filled with workers who are creating streets, providing infrastructure, or building homes. So naturally, there's additional traffic within the neighborhood. Residents are not using their garages or driveways for parking. There's limited amount of space between driveways. The number of vehicles that may be leased or owned by a property owner, and the lack of driving alternatives such as carpooling, transit, or commuter cycling that's offered within the municipality. There are some non-land use bylaw options that could be considered to address the item 1 that's shown on this slide, other than land use bylaw regulations. It could be enforcement. It could be shorten the duration of a vehicle that's parked on a street. It could include an on-street parking program. The city could provide an education program about the importance of parking on site rather than on street. Carpooling programs could be started. There could be municipal programs about clearing out garages or similar, or increasing public transit. So I think that those options can be seen as complementary to any of the land use bylaw options that are being presented today. So the land use bylaw options that were considered for this item, there were 5 of them, that there was no change to the current regulations that are currently allowed within the CN district or other residential districts. Right now, the key regulations are 6-meter wide lots, allowing up to 4 dwelling units per lot and 1 parking stall per dwelling unit over 75 square meters. That's a lot of detail, isn't it? Yeah. But I'm sure we'll get into that as the conversation goes. As Mr. Guerin described, that's some of the detail that needs to happen if this land use bylaw is going to address concerns that have been voiced. Option 2 is around minimizing driveway widths at the property line. That's simply tapering a driveway from 2 wide or 3 wide to a single wide car width. Right now, Beaumont has driveways no wider than the garage, and that's similar to other municipalities in the region. Option 3 is showing driveways on the tentative plan of subdivision. That's the item that's already received some attention today. And the idea is that with this recommendation, when a developer is providing a subdivision application, it provides the city with clarity and for the subdivision authority to determine where access will occur on a lot, which is a requirement of the Municipal Government Act. As Mr. Guerin pointed out, other urban municipalities typically do not provide that level of detail. It is provided in other municipalities around the region, typically rural. Despite the difference between urban and rural requirements, it does provide a design opportunity and an early opportunity for administration and the subdivision authority to determine if there is sufficient space between driveways. Option 4 is about prohibiting opposing front residential driveways. Again, an item that was discussed earlier. The idea is essentially don't have driveways on both sides of the street. We see this in Fort Saskatchewan right now, which prohibits driveways on both sides of the street. The compromise that the municipality made in this particular case is that there would be narrow lots on one side and regular lots on the other side. On a typical street front, you'll see more narrow lots. In one particular subdivision in Fort Saskatchewan, the one with narrow lots, the side with narrow lots had 17 lots on it, and the one with driveways at the front had 14 lots. So there's already an increase in density as a result. And that was the compromise that was made in that particular situation. Item 5 is to pair driveways. Fort Saskatchewan and City of St. Albert do this, essentially lining up driveways beside one another to maximize the amount of space between driveways to provide parking stalls on street. The table at the bottom of this slide shows each of the 3 options that we recommended. It shows their implication scores. It shows the cost to implement them and the time roughly identified to implement them. Option 1 had no change to current regulations, and it had the highest implication score, the least cost, and the shortest amount of time to implement. Although that score was best, we believe there was too much concern. That jumped ahead. Sorry. There's the 5 options. Option 1 had, we felt that there was too much concern around parking to say that there should be no changes to the land use bylaw. And of the changes that we thought worked best were options 3, 4, and 5. Option 3 requires a focus on design so that driveway locations can be identified prior to development. Permits to provide sufficient on-street parking spaces. This is a preventative and gentle way to introduce changes. And as I mentioned, it's allowed by other municipalities in the region and has the least cost option in comparison to the remaining options. Option 4 and 5 are stronger, their regulatory approach. And as our report and administration's report recommends, those options should be vetted through and negotiated with and discussed with the development industry, as Mr. Guerin identified tonight. There are reasons to discuss the details of that. The report provides a general guide for where the direction should go in the beginning of a conversation. So in addition to options 3, 4, and 5 for item 1, we also recommend that council consider the 7 non-land use bylaw options that were discussed, essentially behavioral changes. Go on to the next slide. Council's item 2 describes limiting additional dwelling units or ADUs. These are commonly understood as basement suites or garage suites and garden homes. And with ADUs, they provide what's called gentle density to a neighborhood to help meet the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board's density targets. But with them, there can be a loss of on-street parking. There could be privacy, green space, and sunlight issues when those units are developed. The city implements these ADUs within its neighborhoods because it provides housing options for renters, additional revenue for landowners, and to diversify the city's housing stock. Limiting ADUs would move away from the compact and dense urban form required by the municipal development plan. ADUs are a relatively easy path to achieve the density targets of the region and the MDP's goals because it doesn't require large-scale redevelopment. Limiting changes to ADUs would make it harder for the city to achieve that goal. And decreasing ADUs hinders the opportunity to provide greater diversity and affordability. Just so council is aware, since 2019, when the new land use bylaw was approved, the city has received 68 applications for ADUs, 8 garage suites and 60 basement suites. The location of ADUs in Beaumont is typically, again, within the CN district. The options to implement this item are identified in the second rectangle on the slide, and that's no change to current regulations. Current regulations permit 3 ADUs on a lot. Option 2 describes limiting ADUs to 2 per dwelling or 2 per lot instead of 3. This could be a basement suite and a garage suite, which the development industry has already said is in demand. And option 3 is to make ADUs discretionary. ADUs are currently permitted. Making them discretionary would not follow the approach that council has set in its MDP, where it supports ADUs as a means to provide affordable housing and diversifying the housing stock and increasing density. So we recommended pursuing option 2, which essentially is what council identified in its motion in January of 2023. Council's item 5 describes disallowing 0 lot line dwellings. And again, Sean will mention these as single yard homes. Like many municipalities across Canada, Beaumont currently has many 0 lot line dwellings developed or proposed. As I mentioned earlier, the city of Fort Saskatchewan restricts 0 lot line developments to access through their direct through direct control districts in their zone land use bylaw. Those districts essentially allow street-oriented single-family dwellings on narrow lots with rear lane access. Attached garages in those cases are not permitted. Now, the city of Beaumont right now allows a garage in the front or in the rear yard on those type of lots. Because 0 lot line dwellings are provided on narrow lots, they can yield higher densities within a subdivision and make better use of existing servicing and infrastructure. And the MDP supports that type of innovation and diversity of housing stock. So as this item is described, disallowing essentially means prohibiting the city is, and that would mean the city is not ensuring that a diversity of housing is provided. So I would suggest that this item the item as worded is not supportive or in line with the MDP or market demand. It would promote a less dense Beaumont rather than the compact, walkable, transit-oriented urban form described in the MDP. So the LUB options to present this item are presented in the second rectangle. Option 1 and 2 are incorrect in this list, but the table 3 is the correct listing of the 3 options. Option 1 is no change. The city allows garages in the front or the rear, as I mentioned, in each of the residential districts with a side yard of 1.5 meters, where the other side yard is 0 on lots of 6 meters. Option 2 disallows further 0 lot line homes. Again, completely disallowing means prohibiting, and in LUB terms, this means you'd be eliminating a known legal use or removing that use from a land use district. We would not recommend eliminating a land use from the land use bylaw, as the city would likely be subject to legal challenges and with a high probability of losing those challenges. Option 3 is restricting developments to rear detached garage products, limiting ADUs and increasing the side yard requirement, which is quite a mouthful, but it would also require a lot of changes to the current regulations. We recommend pursuing option 1 as it's the best no implication score and requires the least cost and implementation. And it's in line with what industry has suggested and what the market is dictating. It also helps meet regional density needs, requires no changes to the MDP and LUB, maintains the intent of the MDP and LUB, and it essentially recognizes that there may be some congestion within new neighborhoods, but it should be tolerated in favor of broader regional and municipal goals. Those were the three items that I wanted to chat to. This table is the last of the ones that I'll be talking to, and it describes the 8 items that council provided. In the second column, in the third column, it provides a summary of the options that we recommended, provides their implication score, their cost, and the time to implement. For item 1, we went with 3 options that are shown here. There's also non-land use bylaw actions that council may take to address the issues described by council. We think that those items in combination will address parking, congestion, issues that residents have identified. For item 2, reducing ADUs from 3 to 2 is the recommendation we identified, and we think that that would eliminate some of the density concerns that has also been brought up by residents. Items 3 through 8, we recommended no changes. We recommended no changes because we felt that items 1, 2, and 5 would address many of the concerns that were identified in the Intelligent Futures report and in the comments that we received during our engagement in phase 2. I'll now share the microphone with Sean.
Thank you. So I'm just going to touch base with administration's recommendations. Like David was mentioning, they are very similar in most aspects. I'm just going to touch base and a little bit more of our insight on it and kind of go from there. And administration's, and that'll be through items 1 through 8. The land use bylaw recommends are based using the following criteria, as David had mentioned in a little more clarity in detail. But kind of the oversight, overarching criteria are as follows: utilizing options that have the largest positive impact, the least cost, minimum impact to residents, builders, and developers, maintaining alignment with the MDP and other strategic plans and strategies, as shown above in the inverted triangle that begin at the beginning of the presentation, and the amount of time to amend and implement an option. So we tried to pick basically the best option that best meets this criteria. In item 1, addressing congestion of street parking and encouraging parking in garages and alleviating street congestion, there are 3 options administration recommends. The first is option 3. In advance of issuing a development permit, the developer will need to show the location of residential driveways on their tentative plan at the subdivision phase. This will allow administration the opportunity to review driveway locations and minimize conflicts with street furnishings such as utility boxes, street lights, and maximize space for parking and trees. Option 4, 0 lot line dwellings will be adjusted to provide more street parking by limiting dwellings with front driveways to one side of the street and requiring that the other side of the street to have rear lane access, which will provide more on-street parking. And option 5 is where driveways with front attached garages will be required to be arranged in pairs with curb space maintained between each driveway paired to provide an on-street parking space. As you can see from the summary of options, administration has taken a measured but strong approach to create more parking. There is a cost involved in the recommended options, but implication score is high enough that we feel that we would have a positive outcome without a negative impact on development and residents. For item 2, limiting additional dwelling units. Currently, the city permits 4 dwelling units on a lot and examined the feasibility of decreasing this number while still remaining in alignment with our plans, policies, and council strategic plan. Administration recommends limiting the number of ADUs from 3 to 2 in an amendment to the LUB. This will result in a total of 3 dwelling units to be permitted on a single lot and aligns with what the market is currently providing. Thank you. Again, the implication score is lower than doing nothing, but still meets the needs of council's concerns and still does not negatively affect current market. In item 3, limiting additional dwelling units for the front attached garage product to 1, administration recommends no change to the LUB, as any changes would have large implications and negative impacts to Beaumont's approach to meet the Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Growth Plan targets and our MDP policies, which in turn will limit the city's capabilities to be diverse, inclusive community and provide innovative and affordable housing. With no change has the highest implication score and the minimal cost to the community engagement if it was ever required. In item 4, limiting additional dwelling units for rear detached garage product to 2, requiring 1 be a garage suite. Administration recommends no change to the LUB, as item 1 will support decreasing parking congestion issues, and item 2's limiting ADUs will control future market aspirations and will minimize overcrowding of neighborhoods. As you can see from the implication score is 11, with a minimal cost, if at all, for the public engagement. Item 5, disallowing further zero lot line homes. Administration recommends keeping 0 lot line homes as no change to the LUB. There are several reasons for this recommendation. It will negatively impact housing affordability, equity, diversity, innovation, and housing form. It will require significant changes to the NDP and LUB. It is not in alignment with council's strategic plan, and disallowing 0 lot line homes will negatively impact Beaumont's growth and developers' investments within the city. With this slide here, I'd like to take a few minutes to discuss 0 lot lines. I'm going to say 0 lot lines have kind of gotten a bad rap. They should really be called single side yards. As you can see from the traditional lot diagram up there versus the 0 lot line, you can see that you have on each side of the house 4 feet on a 34-foot lot, relative to the 5 feet on one side on a 29-foot lot. This is still a hypothetical kind of a calculation, just showing here, just kind of for you to see. But what I wanted to take away is most side yards, including my own, I hardly do use efficiently. By moving the house to one side, you open up more space to that side yard where there's more optimization and more utilization. This also minimizes costs to the homeowner. For instance, even buying or paying for fence. Well, you're not putting up fence on the one side of the yard as much as the other side of the yard, so you are minimizing those costs. You're also paying a lower property tax per square foot because you're using a smaller lot, but you're utilizing more of the lot relative to the 4 feet where on both sides you probably wouldn't be utilizing to the most efficient level. There's also some sideline benefits as well. It maximizes developers' property and creates affordability for homeowners. The city realizes tax benefits compared to large lots with the same amount of services. And a single side yard is a tool in the toolbox for increasing density targets to meet our overarching plans. Again, our option summary indicates that no change has an implication score of 11 and the least cost impact. I would like to also address that this table does not show the negative externalities that the local economy may bear if there were to remove 0 lot lines as a tool in our toolbox. Item 6, disallowing further tiny homes and mobile homes. Administration recommends no change currently, as there has been no tiny homes or mobile homes in Beaumont applied for to date. The implication score is at a high of 11, with no cost associated for recommendation. Item 7, adjusting the amount of parking for additional dwelling units to 1 parking stall for a bedroom. Administration recommends no change at this time, as we have alleviated the issue with items 1 recommendation. As well, our approach for parking is a market demand approach. Our city is moving forward with transportation alternatives, as David has mentioned in his previous slides, and we feel that the alternative transportation opportunities will also support residents with alternative modes of transportation. Administration recommends no change, and as such, the implication score reflects a high score of 11 and no cost for engagement. Item 8, limiting the number of business-related vehicles allowed for home-based businesses. Administration recommends no change for item 8. Home-based businesses are a great entry point into the business sector for many and are a way to encourage entrepreneurship and create economies of scale. We as a city are also encouraged our home-based businesses with the broadband project for providing a reliable, high-speed internet connection to every home. By limiting home-based businesses, this could have negative impacts to our local economy and residents. As well, the city administration is introducing a new electronic permitting software system coupled with our current planning process. Upgrades will allow administration to collect data more effectively and provide projections on where there may be issues within the city in the future. Administration recommends no change to item 8 with an implication score of 11 and possible minimal cost for public engagement. For next steps, if council passes a motion for the recommendation options, administration would address options 1 and 2. A bylaw would need to be passed and a public hearing will be held on the amending the bylaw. Administration will consult on the proposed amendments with the development industry and residents and bring back the amending bylaw for first reading by end of quarter 4 of 2023. As well, administration would also conduct internal process development and complete the implementation of the e-permitting software to address item 8, allowing administration to better predict where issues may arise in the future as it pertains to home-based businesses. I'd like to thank you for your time and look forward to your questions.
Gentlemen, thank you for the presentation. The report is extremely thorough. A lot of work into that report. A lot of hands were involved in that report. It's very well done, very informative, provides many items, many options. So it's going to be a bit of a process this evening. So we'll start off with members of council for questions for our presenters. Then what we'll do is we'll go into clarifying questions of administration on each item from 1 to 8. Then we'll move into the motion stage and then we'll go from that point forward. So with that, I'll open up the members of council for questions for our presenters from the presentation. If there's none, that's okay. We'll have questions on the items, I'm sure, no doubt. Any questions for the presenters at this point? Councillor McCook, followed by Councillor Barnard was first on my screen. I apologize. Followed by Councillor McCook. Kathy?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much. Lots of work has gone into this, as the mayor has said, and I appreciate you going over it again, because every time I read it, I pick up something else, because there's a lot of information in here. One question is about the costs that you associated with each one of the items. And the costs associated, I think you said it was about public engagement. That's what those costs are related to. Am I correct?
No, your mic is on. I haven't turned it off.
No problem. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Through to the mayor. Thank you, Councillor Barnhart. Yes, the costs, a couple of things to note with the costs. With each no change, there was a calculated cost when looking at this of potentially having to do some sort of engagement to the public. So there was that added 5,000. You'll see those numbers because a lot of questions may arise on, well, there's $5,000 to do essentially nothing. The whole idea would be is that there is that there for that engagement cost if it was required. Again, in most cases, it probably wouldn't be required, but if it was, well, then we would do economies of scale as well. One thing I do want to note is that with the value of those dollars that you see here today, They're standalone options, and that's how we calculated it out. So when you pick a package of options, there will always be compression in scales and be able to lower those costs down because you'll be doing all the options
That,
together.
that was going to be my point, basically, because I thought if we go ahead with items 1 and 2, and we're preparing for public engagement around a bylaw, that maybe some of these other costs related to those that we're not changing could be eliminated. I'm just thinking there may be some savings there. So
100%. There is savings there as you kind of select your different options, then you can bundle it and then you can definitely do some savings. The calculations were based on making sure that standalone, you can compare each apple to apple, not apple to orange. So this is how that comparison table was built. It wasn't necessarily built for showing you the most efficient economies of scale when doing the calculation out, because at this time, we just don't know which options you may want to select.
just further to that, if there is no change, what are we communicating?
Depending on what the issues may be, I think David, one of the things may be is that if there was some contention or if we wanted to send something out to the public, then we would look at developing a communication program and then communicating it out. This is why I'm saying in most cases where you see no change, there will be probably no dollar value. Sure, go right ahead.
Through the mayor to the councillor, great question about cost. Typically, when we do public engagement, we typically see $5,000 as a base cost for any kind of activity. And I would suggest for something like the tiny homes or mobile homes, which hasn't been seen as an issue, you wouldn't need to communicate anything on that. So there was a $0 cost for that item. For something like zero lot line housing, there's been many questions throughout the entirety of this project. What is the city going to do with zero lot line housing? We felt that there should be a should is not a shall, should be a communication sent out on the city's behalf saying this is what the city's doing with zero lot line housing. Being able to answer any questions about zero lot line housing, and if the city decides to go with zero lot line housing, describing how the issues have been addressed. So a frequently asked questions type of document put out there. So that's where those costs would be. Where Sean is talking about compression is that if you're going to do communications about zero lot line housing and you're going to do some on additional dwelling units, you can combine that effort into one effort, and maybe the entire effort's $5,000 rather than $10,000.
So clearly it's more of a criteria for how we determine where to go rather than this isn't a budget approval per se.
That is correct.
Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cook, followed by Councillor Montcalf-Swain, followed by Councilman Newkirk. Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the report. It was very thorough, and the yes/no graphs definitely helped to kind of understand the reasoning around why certain conclusions were made. So you mentioned that Jensen Lakes in St. Albert does tapered driveways, but you didn't suggest that we go that route. Can you give a little bit more of an explanation on that?
Through the mayor to the councillor, quite frankly, during our interviews, we heard don't do that.
Okay, that's fair.
I think this is where professional judgment or maybe intuition or experience comes into play, is that many families within the metropolitan region have more than 2 vehicles. And tapering driveways down to the width of 1 vehicle might be considered, although considered, might be impractical.
Perfect, thank you. And maybe admin, you can clarify, and perhaps you can as well. When Shane touched on this, can you clarify the intention to limit front access when it's zero lot line? Is it zero lot line across from zero lot line, or is it front access across from any front access?
Through to the mayor, Councillor McCook, thank you for the question. It would be from zero lot line across from zero lot line is kind of what the intentions were. The intention was not to be limiting conventional necessarily. So yeah, your answer is yes.
Perfect, thank you. I agree with that. I think if we limit front access to not just zero lot line, then we unintentionally limit kind of some diverse housing options. So couple more questions, Mayor, that's okay. So to further clarify, I know we don't have any issues with tiny homes. They would not be allowed on a zero lot line lot, correct?
That generally is correct, yes,
Okay.
because our bylaws also have what we call restrictions on limiting to the proximity of the property line as well. So there are other factors in there that really hinder it from being able to be applied to it.
Okay.
Yeah, just sorry to provide additional color. Each of the residential districts allow 4 dwelling units per lot.
Mhm.
So it's possible, but as Sean referred to, unlikely given site coverage and side yard requirements.
Okay, thank you. And then I just had a question around, I don't know if this is potentially the time or if I should wait till more of the debate piece, around the home-based businesses. I know we don't have a lot of data in regards to whether companies are adhering to the current guidelines and how many complaints and stuff we have, as that wasn't in the report. But I think it would be prudent for us to know how many vehicles a home-based business has. I think, as we said, some of the, with the new reporting we'll be getting in the online business licensing, we'll have more information. But I think here what we're saying is, on one hand, we don't want to, we're kind of limiting residential parking a little bit, but then we're saying we don't want to limit home-based business parking. So it feels a little bit contradictory. I'm definitely all for, allowing for home-based business parking and stuff like that. So can you maybe clarify the reasons around that? I think our limits are set to have 2 employees for major business, which would technically be 2 vehicles if that's the case. And then, so I'm not really counting their clients, but if they have multiple vehicles, and then I think where we would run into problems would be if there's also multiple home-based businesses on the same street, we may run into some of those problems. So can you kind of clarify the reasoning around kind of not restricting parking around home-based businesses, but restricting it a little bit more around residential?
Sure, I can answer. As of lately, I actually was doing some approvals on home-based businesses myself as a development authority. So I was actually rolling my sleeve up and looking at those myself. A lot of them, you are correct, have 1 to 2, but when I was looking at a lot of the numbers, they were looking at least 4 spaces that they had available. They had 2 right on the pad, right? And a lot of the home-based businesses are active during 8 to 5 or 9 to 5. So if other family members were away, generally it seemed to be meeting that need that someone else could park on that pad. Is there the potential for conflict? Obviously, yes, we do look at that when we are looking at the current applications as they're going through a development permit and seeing how much compression there is. David?
That's good. So as a development reviewer, on occasion, I think it's important to note that the home-based business minor isn't the one that's in question because they don't allow additional visits to the home. It's the home-based business major that we're concerned about. And the home-based business major, yes, there's opportunity for conflict, potentially around childcare services. That's typically when the nuisances occur the most, when the most volume is seen at a home. But we typically feel that that is a limited nuisance for a short amount of time, and that those who are staying are there for a short period of time. We felt that the regulations were sufficient to address the need. And as far as the residential component going, we're trying to, yes, limit density to limit from going from 3 ADUs down to 2 ADUs, which would theoretically eliminate some need for parking. But we're also trying to provide additional parking in neighborhoods by implementing options 3, 4, and 5 by having more space between driveways, pairing driveways, as an example.
Thank you for that explanation, and I definitely understand that. I think that that will make sense kind of moving forward, but it doesn't clarify things for people who are maybe running into these issues right now in their current built neighborhoods. So, but I appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Markov Swain, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk. Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Looking forward to the discussion. Hopefully not too much debate, but we'll see where that goes. I wonder if administration could just speak to item 1, option 4. So the opposite street parking. It may surprise people that we have zero lot line homes in Beaumont. And I wonder if you could just speak to what we have currently today that's been approved as part of some of the plans. Do we have zero lot lines backing onto each other, or how are they framed out in either Elan or up in La Reve?
You were doing would you like to speak first, or would you like me to?
Thanks, Sean. To the councillor, through the mayor. I don't have specific details on that. What I have heard is that there are subdivisions in place or being considered for zero lot line housing, the number of which I'm not certain.
Okay. Through to the mayor. Thank you, Markov Swain, for the question. Right now, some of the challenges, again, as we had mentioned, is we don't really see the zero lot line until it actually comes in through the development permit side of things as it currently stands. Having that early visibility in the planning stage and the subdivision side would allow us to have that vision of where things are going. So as these communities get built out, we would have a better visibility at that point in time.
All right, let me ask it. Thank you. Let me ask it a different way. In La Reve, there are zero lot line homes that are going up. Opposite those houses,
Currently with that, there's zero lot line houses going up, but they're not being built or permitted at this point in time across from each other at this point. I can't give you a for certain answer because my visibility is only as far as the development permit that comes in as it currently stands.
okay. And what I'm trying to get to here is if we went with option 4, the impact of what that would do. So clearly anything that's been approved, we're gonna, I don't know if grandfather is even the right term, or we're even allowed to say that anymore, but that those options that have been already approved, we're not looking at touching those. It would be anything new that would be going forward. I was just curious if a developer in these particular areas had planned on an overall site, and then suddenly all of a sudden now we're changing that, and that's going to impact the design of how they're looking at that. Does that question make sense?
100%. I understand. I think where you're going with it. Let me know if I'm hitting off the beat, but at this point in time, because I don't have necessarily that visibility, I think it's a takeaway that we would want to take away, and we can get you the answer in more detail if that helps.
Yeah, it does. And sorry to put you on the spot. I think importantly, we had in our open forum a question that came up around making sure we check back with the development community, and you've clearly outlined that in your report that you're going to go through and do that. And so I would just, depending on where we go tonight, there's not the final decision. Clearly, that there is a process we've got to go through, public hearing, etc. So that would be one thing that I would be interested in, is just the impact of the development community who have already planned on X. That does, particularly that one there, does that change what they're looking for? So I think my question and what I'm hearing from you is that you'll look through that in the process.
I would prefer to, take that away if I could.
Yeah.
And for sure, I think, we, part of our plan was to engage the development and building community in this so that we can get a good working relationship that meets both needs, or both parties' needs, as much as possible.
Yeah, okay. And if possible, maybe we can make a motion to change the word, to ban the word zero lot lines and make it single side yards, and we can have a proper discussion maybe. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Looking forward to the discussion once we dive into it. But fantastic report. Thanks for putting all the time and effort and giving it to us in advance so we could actually read it before tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newkirk. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's been said tonight, but no, thanks to ISL for the tremendous work here. It's probably one of the more thought-provoking documents with options and permutations and combinations and questions and examining how all that fits together is quite a task and quite a challenge since it dropped in our inboxes on Friday. So council was up to the challenge because you're going to have lots of questions and comments tonight. So thank you very much for that. Lots of good questions asked here. And as I said, there's a lot of information in the document. Was the actual definition of a parking stall discussed in the report or contemplated?
I'll let David talk about the report in detail.
To the councillor through the mayor. Thank you for those kind words about the report. I'd like to acknowledge that through iterations of it, your development services team continued to push us to provide a more and better information. So that team deserves credit for sure. As far as the question about parking, how do we define a parking stall? Is that the question?
Yeah, the question is like, was the actual definition of what is a parking stall? Was that contemplated in this report at all? What is defined as a parking stall? Because we're talking about them a lot.
We're defining a parking stall based on how the land use bylaw identifies it and how it demands parking stalls of a particular development. In the land use bylaw, it's described that one stall must be provided for single family dwellings or per lot over 75 square meters. So further definition is simply that. It's just one parking stall is to be provided. I believe there's dimensions in the LUB that describe what they are.
Yeah, that's fine. And where I'm going with this is, I asked a question in a previous meeting around, is it even realistic? Is it actually realistic to continue to count a standard garage as 2 stalls? Because that's not what we're seeing. There's a lot of people that do, but there's so many that don't. It's an extended living space. It's a storage space. And, you're grinning because right? And so, my question is it actually sure a garage of these dimensions should contain 2 vehicles? But when, my next question is going to be on the non-LUB things, which you addressed earlier, right? So, I'm trying to pair these 2 thoughts together. When we see an action that is happening here over and over and over again, that isn't fitting what the definition that is put forward is it actually realistic to continue counting parking stalls in the way we do? That's my question. Is it realistic? Like, I know the dimensions say so, but is it actually realistic?
The questions that you're asking are fundamental to a land use bylaw and how a municipality operates. The assumption that we made is that typically you're seeing a single family dwelling with 2 parking stalls within a double garage, and it can likely provide 2 parking stalls on the driveway space. And on that basis, most of the development provided can accommodate that if those spaces are allocated for those vehicles. That's the assumption of most land use bylaws.
Yeah, no, 100% fair. And I'm just setting the stage for some questions that I have later. But I just want to move back to, you did address right off the hop the non-LUB options. And I just want to and there's 7 of them there. And I'm just wondering, which ones would you see that even fit in Beaumont, right? Like, anytime you do more, you make more that you have to enforce. You make more details that have to be looked after. And every time you do that, what do you need? More staff, right? Like, so what, of these non-LUB options, I don't think there was a recommendation on which ones it says consider these, right? but there was no real recommendation on, these couple make the most sense in Beaumont. Is that something to take away and prioritize, or is that something you're prepared to say, hey, numbers X and Y, might make sense in Beaumont, or what does that look like?
Okay, through to the mayor. Thank you, Mr. Van Newkirk. Great question. I think, we can definitely take that away and see how it best fits, utilizing the data sets that we have. The biggest challenge with that is that these options are to try and, I guess, encourage habit change, and how you do that, I guess, would be reflective of that data set that we have and what would best suit that. So I don't necessarily feel that we could give you that answer immediately. And I think anything we do would be at our professional opinion and would be an option. The recommendations we provided here this evening are kind of a hard set of what we would recommend based on what council had brought forth on those 8 items. So like I said, we could definitely look at that and get back to you on potential options based on those. But kind of the driving force of those 8 items, that when I was in the January meeting was council was kind of looking for some hard set kind of changes. So we tried to make sure that we maintain that focus when going forward.
Yeah, you bet. And that's the response I would expect, right? Like, it's not a trick question at all, right? But I just want to acknowledge that, like, the premise of this whole meeting and the solutions and everything that we've put forward here, they're all engineered solutions. They're all planned solutions to force people to do something different because they don't have this, or they do have to do this now, or it's going to be built in this way, right? So we haven't actually addressed through this document any of the behavior changes that have actually led to the problems we have. I just want to be very clear with that on the outset, right? We're going to put the driveways different. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to make these different drop-down menus in here. We're going to do that. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. These are all engineered solution to behavior-based problems. So I just wanted to lay that down, ahead of this discussion here tonight, because if we were using our garages better, if we were using our driveways better, probably our inboxes wouldn't have been so full of all the complaints around parking. And, parking has been literally the beast for me that has necessitated examining some of these things and supporting motions as we go. So anyways, I just wanted to give you the context of why I was asking those questions. There's no trick questions here. So yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think maybe I might be at freedom to answer the question directly.
Sure.
There were 7 items that range from enforcement to public transit. Some of the items would have less cost attached to them, and I think those could be easy wins if the city put money towards it. Those were items 4, 5, and 6, which were around an education program around the importance of on-site parking rather than on-street, encouraging carpooling, and developing municipal programs like garage clearouts. I think those ones are low-hanging fruit that have potential to change some behavior, might capture some folks. But as the other ones start to go, you're getting more on the enforcement side, and those are hammers that you might get a lot of pushback to, and it depends on council's tolerance to those complaints. So around enforcement or providing an on-street parking program, that's a hammer. That isn't as soft as the other ones, but they both are intended to change behavior. And then the next on the list is incredible investment into the increasing public transit. So I think there's a range of options that you could put in place.
Yeah, on the behavior-based side, imagine if we had, 1 or 2 behaviors changed every block or every other block, it would just free up that much more room for other things. So yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cook, a backup follow-up question for the presenters. Kat, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify. So we already touched on and heard about the differences between the impact showing driveways in the planning stages on the engineered drawing versus the subdivision stage. Can you clarify why we're making the decision to require it at that stage versus the engineered drawing stage?
Yeah, you got this.
Okay. So through to the mayor, Councilor McCook, thank you. On this question here, you're basically wanting to know what is and I'm just going to repeat the question to make sure I understood it correctly, is what is the benefits to doing it earlier stage for planning of driveways?
Sure.
Some of the benefits to doing it at an earlier stage allows us to evaluate it and align with what the community is being built out to, so that we can see with more visibility how it's being built out at an earlier stage rather than a latter stage, which is kind of where we're at right now. It allows also us to see other uses, utility uses and planning of other issues that may come up earlier in the stages, rather than dealing with them at the development permit stages. I discussed in kind of the process development side of things. When we do our LUB and they go into subdivision, we don't necessarily have that visibility. And then of course, we come in with the direct development permits, and then we're looking at it from more of a holistic of that house, that location, rather than the holistic of the area and the community. So it gives us that capability. Let's see if David, do you have anything to add?
That was a fulsome answer, Sean. I don't know if I need to tag on to that, except to say that having it at the early stage provides the subdivision authority the opportunity to identify where access is going to be. And if there's sufficient space for a parking stall, there are many occasions in neighborhoods where there's very limited space for parking, as you know, between driveways. So if there's an opportunity to maximize that parking space with this design change, I think it's something worthwhile to follow through on. And everything that the report said, and Mr. Guerin has identified through UDI, there's an opportunity to have that discussion and negotiation. The reports that we've provided don't provide an end state. They provide an opportunity for that conversation to occur.
Rick, thank you for clarifying. Can you just speak to the expedience of kind of approving subdivision plans and everything? Does this impact it? I mean, they have to be looked at regardless, whether it's, you know, at one stage or the other. So can you just speak to that?
I think, you know, obviously when you add more to something, there is more time to review. Realistically though, when you have a fuller picture on something, it sometimes may add ease to understanding the holistic picture rather than adding question after question, which can delay a process as well. So I think having that holistic review and that visibility can benefit us in the early stages, may add a little bit of time, but it might save you a lot of time on the back end when you're looking at it from a permit or a direct individual permitting perspective. So that in the overall process, you may be just switching time for time.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification.
Thank you, Councillor. Ms. Raymond, you wish to interject at this point for a moment? Your mic's on.
Thank you. Thanks, Council. So one thing to note when we're showing those driveway locations at the subdivision plan is that that's still conceptual, right? And they're not going to be bound to it in like a, you shall do this, there'll be no deviations from there. When they do get to the detailed design stage, that is where the rubber really hits the road in terms of the servicing for the neighborhood. But we do need to look at it earlier in terms of a more holistic overview. They will be needing to think about where all those site furnishings go, what the conflicts could look like, how parking is going to function. We really want to know how that public realm is going to function, and allowing us to find that out at the subdivision stage. We're already asking for conceptual lotting, shadow plans. We're asking for a lot of more detailed subdivision. Our bylaw has a different format than many other bylaws within the province, where we do contain a lot more subdivision standards within our bylaw. I don't think we're asking for too much here that is going to take a lot of time. They already have a lot of information, but it might take them a little bit more time now, but it'll allow us to get in with the long range engineer, which we talked about through the service review, and actually be able to negotiate and make sure that the servicing works for the neighborhood, because sometimes we do find conflicts and they go, subdivision's already set, we can't go back and change that. So we just want to kind of be more proactive, and that's what we're trying to do here.
Thank you, Ms. Raymond. Appreciate that. Councillor Newkirk, get a quick question before I move on here. Councilor Seaver, the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And just a question for, I guess, administration, whether it's Mr. Hipkiss or Ms. Raymond. Does this also lend us to a solution where we can identify not having fire hydrants and light posts in driveways as well? Like, does that help? Does having this at the subdivision stage also help that? Or am I making that connection in the wrong spot?
Oh, sorry. I thought I put your microphone on. I apologize. Yeah. Ms. Shipp, just go ahead.
Through to the mayor, Councillor Van Newkirk. Thank you. I think it will give us a holistic approach of understanding where things are being placed. Obviously, the scenario that we've discussed in previous discussions, you know what I mean? Some people will just do what they want to do at times, and we have to work with some of those things in the due course and process. But I think having that capability overall to have that visibility is a huge benefit within the organization.
Yeah, that's right. You can't stop people from not listening. I get it. You know, but any more visibility that we can give to not have permanent fixtures in driveways is better. So if this even lends to help a little bit to that, that'd be awesome. So
In the report where I had a quick discussion on it, we would be looking and considering where those furnishings would be, where trees may be, and the potential for those, right? It doesn't necessarily mean, like Ms. Raymond had pointed out, necessarily where it has to be, but it gives us that opportunity to understand where it could be.
and where future infrastructure that might exist down the road also could be, like where are the holes and gaps? So, yeah.
100%.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. With that concludes our questions on the presentation. Gentlemen, thank you again. Don't go very far. We'll pray to act. Right. Normally take a break about 7:30, take a break. It's 7:40. We'll take a 10-minute break and we'll come back and I'll explain how we're going to proceed for the rest of the evening on this particular next issue. Okay. So we'll be back here at roughly 10 to 8. Thank you. Thank you, Shima. We wish that we're back live again after our break. Thank you very much again to our presenters, administration, and our consultant. A huge report, a lot of information, a lot of items, a lot of options, a lot amount of work, and it's much greatly appreciated after our discussion earlier in the year. And we will now progress in the next part of our meeting. So what we'll do is our procedure will be, I will put forth the motion from the report onto the floor, at which time we will then take attachment 3, and we will go through each item line by line to see if council has consensus on the recommendations for item 1, item 2, 3, on so on down to item 8. So for example, item 1 has 3 recommendations, option 1, 4, and 5. If a council doesn't want to have option 5, as an example, only an example, they make a motion saying to take option 5 out. We would debate that motion, vote on it. If option 5 comes out, attachment 3 will be amended accordingly. If option 5 motion does not succeed, option 5 stays in and we move on down the line. That's how we'll do it. Madam Clerk, I got that more or less correct from our discussions earlier on procedure?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I will help council through the process as we go.
Thank you
along.
very much, Madam Clerk. I will rely on you if I need to as the evening goes on. I'm sure I will. This is a lot going on tonight. So with that, we are going to proceed then, and I will make the motion If I could, Madam Clerk, on the screen, please. Thank you. That by December 31st, 2023, administration prepare a bylaw to amend bylaw 944-19 land use bylaw in accordance with the summary table of changes as set out in attachment 3, the September 2023 proposed LUB amendments report. Thank you. And with that, I'll open up to discussion on the motion following our procedure this evening with attachment 3. So council, please join me on attachment 3. If you have it on your screen or hard copy in front of you. Madam Clerk, could you put attachment 3 on the screen if you have it handy? I should have asked you before. I didn't, my mistake. So take a minute and we'll put attachment 3 on the screen. I don't have that handy, sorry, the page number. I didn't think to bring it up. 443.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, yes, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, appreciate that. So with that, item 1 and 2 kind of go together. So we're going to take item 1 and 2 on a combined basis. Okay, I'll ask the question from council. Any discussion on item 1 and item 2, the recommendations of options 3, 4, and 5 with item 1 and recommendation option 1 with item number 2. Any discussion from members of council? Councilor Van Nieuwkerk, Steve, you have the floor, followed by Councilor Markov-Swain. Steve?
Yeah, so if we were to put an amending motion forward, is now the time for that?
Amending motion?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, regarding number 2, I would put an amending motion forward that we reduce the number of additional dwelling units from 3 to 1.
Okay, so just to clarify, principal residence plus 1 dwelling unit.
That's right.
Recommendation, I think, is principal residence plus 2 for a total of 3.
That's right.
3 for a total of 2, correct?
Yeah.
Thank you. Please speak to your motion and I'll ask council to debate the motion in a moment here. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, just a question for administration. Do I need to help writing that or how do we? Okay, sounds good. Yeah, for me, there's the question of density and parking and November 22, 2022 meeting. The summary presented in that was spoken to in the opening statement, and it spoke to the feasibility and impacts of adding additional parking restrictions for business uses and additional dwelling units in current residential zones. You know, it's difficult to do things about what we currently have. So the focus of this meeting is definitely, you know, what can we do different moving forward? So for me, my main concern and the main thing I've heard from residents is around parking and where people put their vehicles. Vehicles aren't going away in our society. Density targets have been set. Planning is going to be done to meet or exceed density targets. Therefore, one of the tools that I have to at my disposal as a councillor to try and limit that is this motion here tonight. So my proposal would be to reduce the number of additional dwelling units allowed on a single lot from 3 currently down to 1.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, Steve, you mean 3 down to 2?
I'm saying 1.
1 additional.
The people who live in the house plus 1.
Principal
So
plus
that's an
1.
additional dwelling unit, 1 additional dwelling unit.
Yeah, the recommendation.
So currently it says 3 in our bylaw.
Yeah.
The recommendation is 2. I'm proposing an amendment to go from 3 to 1.
Okay.
So
I don't think I know what you're saying, but okay, the currently right now, principal residence plus 3 is the current situation. Recommendation is principal residence plus 2 for a total of 3. You're suggesting principal residence plus 1 for a total of 2.
that's correct.
Right. So 1, 1, and 1. 1 and 1. That's what Steve's suggesting is the motion.
Yeah, regarding
So-
item 2.
Yeah, item 2, which is the additional dwelling units.
Yeah.
Okay, let's discuss this motion. Who wishes to speak first? Sam, you had your hand up. Is it a separate motion or you're speaking to this one? Okay, just so we're clear. Sam, you have the floor on this motion.
Thank you. Respectfully, I think that's a terrible idea. we've tried hard to make sure that we can attract larger developers to come here. We've heard from the larger developers that these products with these additional dwelling units are the ones that are selling. Affordability is a challenge, giving folks options to be able to buy a house with potential additional income is there, as well as look at options for family members. We've talked about housing affordability, et cetera. So, that is 2 to 1 might sound, insignificant, but that is a drastic shift. And I don't think any of the report here or any of the speakers, the professional speakers, have considered that. And so, I would have suspected if one of the options was to go down to 1, there would be much stronger voice through that process. So I'm strongly opposed to that. I'll wait to see where the rest of my colleagues are now that we're dwindling down to 5 here. And like, if it looks like I'm losing, I might have a friendly motion to ask you to consider about maybe asking administration to go through and seek input on that process as opposed to directing them to do that process. That might be a softer way, given the fact that this is coming back to us. So I'll leave it there and then just see where the rest of the debate goes, and see if I need to come back for a friendly amendment to that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cook, followed by Councillor Barnhart, followed by me. Pat, you have the floor on this motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to say that I also disagree with this motion. When I consider kind of what people are facing today, I think one of the biggest issues is affordability. And, while I recognize there are parking restraints within the city, I think some of those can be dealt with people parking inside their garages rather than on the street. When I think about affordability and the ability for especially younger people to live and be able to have some form of home, sometimes those options are to have ADUs to be able to afford homes. So I think allowing this option, and also it allows people who are aging as well to potentially move in with their kids. And we're seeing a little bit more of that as well. So I think leaving that option open is the better option.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor, Kathy, followed by myself.
Thank you, Mayor. For the same reasons as Councillor McCook just said, I would be opposed to that change. I like the direction we're going in, and I don't think parking is the reason not to do this. For all of the reasons that I heard Councillor McCook say, I think providing both for the seniors in our families as well as for the young people who can't afford to move out until they have steady jobs and make enough money to pay for a down payment. I just think the times have really put the strain on what we have in terms of housing stock. And I would like to ask the question. I don't know if you want to take the time now, but I would be voting against the amendment. With due respect, I understand where it's coming from, but if the administration has any examples of this right now, I don't know if that's fair to even ask that. Are we seeing more than 2 secondary suites in a home?
Ms. Raymond?
Through the chair to Councillor Barnhart, no, we're not. We are seeing only that 3 dwelling units right now. Nobody's done the uptake to 4. Just a quick note on the process. If you did vote to go from 3 to 1, this would still be a bylaw amendment. It would go through its own public hearing process. So even if you directed us to make that change, you could still reject that change later.
Thank you for that. Yes, no, I would not be in favor of changing it to 1. I would like to stick with the 2.
Okay. 2 additional. Not 1 additional, 2 additional, right? Yeah. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I get that. I agree with my colleagues respectfully, Councilman Newkirk. I do believe the public engagement coming up this fall, if there's a significant outcry, administration and our consultant and our professional development people will take that into consideration coming back to us with a future report. So I would not be in favor of supporting your motion to reduce it from 3 to 2 total dwellings on a property. So having said that, any final comments before I call for the vote on your motion? If you wish to speak one more time, you're welcome to.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I've said my piece on this
Okay.
one. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. With that, Council, I will ask you to vote on the motion. If you vote no, it will defeat it. If you vote yes, it'll change the recommendation. So on the amendment only, that's correct. On the amendment only. Council, would you please vote? And that is defeated 4-1. So item 2 stays as it is on attachment 3, as you see it before you. Any further discussion on item 1 or item 2 on attachment 3 before us? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor I'm looking to see you talking to Sam. No. Councillor Monkoff Swain, you have the floor.
Yeah, I don't have any concerns. I just wanted to make sure that my question earlier is going to be considered as part of the discussion around the impact to what we've already approved, specifically for item 1.4. I'm seeing head nods. I don't think we need to make any motion with that. I think you've got that. And so I'll be asking for that feedback again coming forward. So I just want to make sure that point was there. Otherwise, this looks good here. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councilman Newkirk, follow up. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah. Did I hear that we're moving on to number 3 now then? Is that correct? Or
I was planning to, unless you're still on item 1 or 2. If you're not, that's okay.
no,
We can move on to item
I would
3.
move to number 3. Yeah.
Thank you. Having said that, just to reiterate what Sam said, the report talking about prohibiting zero lot line attached garage product on both sides of the street. It's identified item 1, but it should be part of item 5 too. We'll get to that when we get to it. Make sure we're doing that going forward. Okay, having said that, we are now on item 3. Members of council, discussion on item 3, please. Any concerns? Councilman Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor. Item 3. Oh, I'm sorry. Your mic's on, Steve.
Yeah, you'll see a theme from Steve here tonight. So propose an amending motion on number 3, please. That amending motion would be I propose to change the current regulations. I propose limiting additional dwelling units for front attached garage product to 1.
Thank you, Councillor. Would you please speak to your motion?
Yeah, thank you. Much to the similar comments I made with the first attempt to go from 3 to 1. Parking challenges are going to remain. We live in a society where everyone's driving, families are growing, more and more vehicles that you put forward, they all need room. This number 3 speaks to front garage product, and I would propose moving it from what it currently is to 1. So.
Thank you, Councilman Newkirk. Appreciate that. Discussion on the motion, please, members of council. Councilman Monkoff Swain. Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, for me, I don't support the motion again. I think habits have to come into play here. I know Beaumont seems to be allergic to parking in your garage, and you know that. For me, for all the reasons beforehand, I think that there's ample parking, and for all the comments around affordability, providing opportunities for families to move in with each other and all that sort of stuff. So I won't support that motion, and looking forward to seeing what the feedback comes from the public as we get through that, because that one was an interesting one. I was surprised at administration's recommendation there, but I do support it here, having heard from everyone else on this one. So I'm good there.
So
I am not in favor. I am good speaking. I will be voting against.
thanks. Just to clarify, appreciate that, Sam. Discussion from other members of council. Councilor McCook, Kat, you have the floor.
Yeah, for the similar reasons to before, and to Councillor Monkoff Swain's point, I look forward to hearing more from the public around that as we go to public engagement regarding this, but I'll vote against it for the same reasons.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councillor Barnhart, do you wish to speak? I see your finger there. Well, please do. It's part of the process. I'm fine with it. Please.
Yeah. No, I am fine with it going forward as is, and I think we'll be hearing from residents if they disagree. And at that point, we'll have the public hearing. We'll be able to deal with the issues.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. I won't bother speaking just in the sake of expediency. We have three counselors leaning towards the no side, but that's okay. Councilman Newkirk, wish any final comments on your motion, please, sir? You're okay? All right, council, having said that, you've heard discussion on the motion. Would you please vote on the motion? And that carries that is defeated 4-1. Clarify, defeated 4-1. Thank you. That takes care of item 3. Item 4 is now up for discussion, limiting additional dwelling units for rear detached garage product to 2 and requiring one to be a garage suite. A recommendation from administration is no change to current. Is there a member of council looking to discuss this matter on item 4? Councilor Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. In the same way that I was proposing a reduction before, I would propose an amending motion, limiting additional dwelling units for rear detached garage product to 2 and requiring one to be a garage suite. So the home would have the homeowner plus 1 ADU, and then the garage would have a suite above it for a total of 2 on that property where there is a rear detached garage.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments you wish to make on your motion?
No, same comments as before, coming from the same place. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Members of council wish to speak on the motion. Seeing none. Okay, I will just briefly speak. I will, Councilor Cook, I apologize. I didn't see your hand up there. Kat, you have the floor.
To clarify, if the original motion goes forward, would this not cover that? Because it is limiting it to 2.
My
Anyway.
understanding from the report is because item 1 is essentially going to go forward, as we've discussed already, it does address the parking issues that item number 4 is looking at doing. So I think it does kind of cover it, but that's just my personal opinion. Administration, Ms. Kendra or Ms. Raymond, do you care to clarify, make sure that what I said is correct, or if not, please clarify me.
Thank you, Mayor. So for item 4, it does limit it to 2, which is very same as what we have up there for
Mhm.
item 2, but it does require 1 to be a garage suite. So it's got the specific nuance to it. So you would have, 1 would be, it's just the requirement of the additional 1 for the garage suite. Whereas right now, if they picked, they could choose where that would go. If that was a granny pod or one in this basement or wherever, they'd have a choice. That's taking it away.
Thank you for the clarification.
Councilor Goswayne, Sam, you have something to add?
Sorry, Councilman Newkirk, so explain the logic then. So you'd like them to, one of them to be a garage suite. Explain the logic behind that, how that helps parking.
Yeah, so you'll have this is me attempting to give some middle ground to the rest of council because there's a continued desire to fit more ADUs into the same piece of land that is getting smaller, but we aren't decreasing the number of cars. So with this unit here, you have the homeowner with an additional ADU. So, the vehicles associated with that, potentially what we've spoken about before, hopefully there's some better front parking now. And then you have the garage in the back, presumably with a pad, but maybe not, because we've seen some 3 to 6 foot pads in the backyard. So this is me trying to, give a little in the give and take world of what we're trying to discuss here, ensuring that ensuring that the things that other councillors have brought forward are considered a little more thoroughly than the other reductions, but granted not being the best solution for parking. What I didn't, I'll just stop there.
No, that's helpful for me to understand your logic behind that one. I got item 3, understood the logic. I disagreed with it. I didn't understand the logic on 4. You just explained it. So I still don't support the motion, but I'll be focused in on that when it comes back to us through that process. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Good job clarifying.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions for clarification for Mr. Van Newkirk? Steve, any final comments?
No.
You're
good.
okay?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so we will now vote on Steve's amended motion on item 4, okay? Council, please vote. Motion is defeated 4-1. Thank you, Counselor. All right, item number 5, and before we go to clarification on item number 5, I just want to clarify with administration, my own peace of mind, I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but in the report, we talk about prohibiting zero lot line front attached garage product on both sides of the street. Item number 1 and 2 have passed or will be passed as presented, which incorporates this as well. So that will be incorporated with our new land use bylaw going forward for zero lot lines, assuming zero lot lines are allowed to remain if that goes through here. Is that correct, Ms. Raymond? Thank you very much for clarifying that. All right, we are on item number 5, zero lot line. Recommendation is to continue to offer zero lot line products in the city of Beaumont. Any discussion on this item from council or any motions or comments? Councilman Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and no amending motion on this one, but I did want to just take a little bit of an opportunity to speak on, basically the self and provided education that I've had on zero lot lines, and probably better named single side yard. Thank you. We need t-shirts. But for myself, I've spoken out a lot on concerns with zero lot line housing in the past months. And what I've learned as I've explored the issue, because it needed exploring. I needed to wrap my head around what it was, what it wasn't, what it could be. And what I learned is that the zero lot line product can be integrated successfully into neighborhoods within Beaumont in the region. It can happen. I believe that the issues to date have not been necessarily due to the product, but on how the product is and was distributed and organized in the community. And I think a bunch of the things that we're talking about here tonight are going to address that moving forward. Updated planning measures that are going to be, or that are being discussed here tonight that will then, they'll be socialized within the development community post meeting, should guard of, most of the issues that we've heard from that are directly attributed to this product. So anyhow, I just wanted to set the record straight for myself personally. I set a course for learning on zero lot line, and I just wanted to say my piece on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Well said. And I believe you definitely were open-minded about it. And I think you appreciate your comments this evening. Zero lot lines, in my experience that I've seen in the past, have not been great. But I have seen recently through the tour last week and other products, the zero lot line having garages on one side and not on the other side, having one continuous curb to allow for parking is a very good way of accommodating parking and zero lot line construction and neighborhoods. So it looks very, very good. So I'm very happy to look at that as part of our land use bylaw going forward, that we incorporate that style of zero lot line. It'll become very attractive for a number of people that at the proper price point for entry into the housing market. So having said that, see no further comments or concerns or questions on item 5. Item 5 is as is, and move forward. Item 6, disallow further tiny homes or mobile homes. Questions, discussion, amendment, motions from members of council on item number 6. Recommendation is no change, as you know from the report. Seeing none, item 6 is as is. We'll go forward. Item number 7, pardon me, adjusting the amount of parking for additional dwelling units to 1 parking stall per bedroom. Recommendation is no change as per the report. I'll entertain any comments or questions from members of council. Councilman Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This will be my final amending motion here. For me, I propose that we amend the land use bylaw to require 1 parking stall for every unit ADU over 45 meters squared, which is about 485 square feet. And I'll speak to that.
Please speak.
Yeah,
Sorry, please proceed.
yeah, no problem.
You know what I meant.
You betcha. So currently, the land use bylaw requires 1 stall per unit over 75 meters squared. I'm going to consistently just speak in square feet from here on in. So about 800 square feet. So with that in mind, this is all from the report. A typical additional suite is 400 to 600 square feet, and that doesn't trigger an additional parking stall. So you have the homeowner and another suite, no additional parking stalls are triggered. times 1, 2, or 3, depending on, the situations and what happens here tonight. So we could have today up to the homeowner and 3 ADUs. So we could have 4 families in a home today and not have any additional parking triggered from the 3 additional ADUs, so long as the ADUs were under 600 feet. That's the situation we have today. Then when we talk about a garage suite, it says the typical garage suite is about 500 some, let's call it 600 square feet. Again, no parking is triggered. So right now we have different multiple combinations of ADUs that, like that could or could not exist. And it's all a theoretical conversation at this point. But the nuts and bolts of it is right now with the trigger being at 75 square meters, which is 800 square feet, I'm proposing a change to 45 meters squared, which is about 485 square feet. The reason I'm proposing that is to try and capture the need for parking to be triggered when more people are on a lot. We know that as more people move in, they're going to have cars, they're going to have vehicles. And if we don't make this change, we're not doing anything to help ourselves in the parking requirements. I talked earlier about not examining the definition for a parking stall. So, we went there. So, your standard garage, 20 by 20, that has 2 vehicles and a parking pad in front, that's 4, right? So there shouldn't be, that should be ample parking if everyone was using it. If you had a triple, you'd have 3 inside, 3 outside, you'd have 6. So by changing and ratcheting this number down from 75 to 45, I don't think it creates as many issues as some might think, but it definitely will have people thinking more about parking stalls, parking requirements, and maybe some more communication between all the stakeholders along the way around how parking will be required with these different situations. So I'll stop there, Mr. Mayor. And that's where my head's at right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion from members of council on the proposed motion to reduce the square footage required for a parking spot. Councillor Barnett, followed by Councillor McCook. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm really not sure that having a parking stall or not is going to change too much, but it is actually going to be a cost to the developer, to the homeowner. And what I'm thinking is that an assumption you made was that for every unit, there's someone driving a vehicle. And that's in the world I'm envisioning, it's not necessarily the case. Someone can't maybe afford another home, so they might be living there and relying on others in public transportation, et cetera. So I'd like to think that we'd look at some of those other non-LUB options to address the need for those parking stalls. I also don't like taking land and putting it to parking. So I'm kind of thinking at this point that I'm not looking for more parking stalls. I'm looking for less. So that's it. But I appreciate you bringing this forward. You're really putting us through the test here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCook. Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I think some of the challenges that municipalities face is the cost of taking care of roads and parking and all that stuff. And so even with additional dwelling units, it doesn't really cover the cost of paving extra roads and parking and whatnot. So I guess my question to Councillor Van Newkirk is, where does this extra parking come from? And then, we have some people who have homes who may have, 3 teenagers with 3 vehicles, and we don't limit their parking. So, then I just wonder, we're limiting one, but we're not limiting the other, and kind of what are the optics of that? So if you could maybe just clarify that.
Steve, you're good to go.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for me, this we're not going to invent parking out of thin air. That isn't going to happen. Everything comes down to a surface area, square footage. The more road you pave, the more road you have to service, the more road there is to collect water. Those aren't hard concepts. For me, the motivation here for me is to make sure that everyone is considering where are you going to park and how many people can we put there? Beaumont is not as connected as we'd like to be right now. I've voted yes on all of the transit things that have been up here for the last 7 years. So long as nothing crazy's happening, that's likely where my head's going to be, but we're not there yet. We consistently hear that we don't have enough transit for things. So guess what that means? Cars. Can we carpool more? Yep. Does Uber come out here? A couple of them, but it's expensive. What are we gonna force? I hope a conversation around how many dwelling units are we really gonna put in this building? This is another tool to potentially limit the number of ADUs that might be put in there, which keeps the number of vehicles down. Beaumont is a vehicle place, and I don't see that changing in the near future. I want to be part of changing that moving forward. I really do want to explore some of the non-LUV things that are put in front of us. There's some educational campaigns and stuff that could happen, but wide convoluted answer. Hopefully I've provided some color as to what I'm thinking. So.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions or discussion on the motion proposed by Councillor Van Newkirk? Seeing none, Council, I'll ask you to vote on this as well, please. That motion is defeated 4-1. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Councillor Van Newkirk. Appreciate that. We are now on item number 7. Oh, sorry. That was 7, wasn't it? My mistake. Item number 8, limiting the number of business-related vehicles allowed for home-based businesses. Discussion from council on the recommendation, which is on item 8. No change to the current land use bylaw in this regard. Any questions from any members of council on this one or concerns? Okay, seeing none, item 8 will go forward as is. So, Madam Clerk, I believe we have gone through all items this evening, and I think we have essentially come to consensus. Any further discussion on the motion? I will at this point entertain any comments from councillors on the motion presented. Councillor McCook, you wish to have a few words? You have the floor, Kat.
I do, thank you. I just want to first acknowledge council for bringing these issues forward for exploration. I think they're important conversations to have. And thank you to Councillor Van Newkirk for also trying to think outside of the box on how to tackle kind of this parking issue, while also looking at, affordability and land space and servicing and all that kind of stuff. They're not easy problems to solve. But I thank admin as well for going through each and ISL for being clear on the potential ramifications of changing the bylaw, and to all the residents for participating and giving feedback. I believe that going through this has really highlighted the need for our city to be innovative regarding many of our bylaws. The reality is that we cannot build out the city like we have in the past. We can't afford to. We need to achieve density targets, and it's not equitable. And quite frankly, a number of residents can no longer afford certain types of housing. If we're going to move forward in an equitable and environmentally friendly way, we need to have a flexible land use bylaw. So we need to allow for a variety of housing, and part of this will address the density piece. There's often a lot of talk about making bylaws less restrictive, and I think this bylaw does exactly that. It leans on the more innovative side, which is what our city needs. Affordable housing is something that we have to consider. Allowing people options for more affordable housing is important. And I'm going to go with my plug again, any chance that I get. I'm going to also say that I would like to see more options from builders and developers for smaller bungalow lots for people who are aging, people with mobility issues, and people that just can't go into 2-story homes. We need to have these as an option. So if we're going to talk about diverse housing types, I think the consideration of more smaller type of bungalows have to be part of that conversation. I will support this motion as it is, as I believe it covers some of the parking issues. But like most of our master plans and bylaws, there are complementary things that also go along with it. And this is one of the things like transit that we have to ensure our city has. to kind of complement changes like this with our bylaw and allow for affordable and diverse housing options. So I will support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and I agree wholeheartedly with your comment about the bungalow idea. Many people want bungalows, tired of stairs. So hopefully developers will take heed of that, and we can hopefully see some new products in that area, as well as what we've seen on the tour recently, very innovative home designs. Thank you, Councillor McCook. I have Councillor Councillor Moncalf Swain, followed by Councillor Barnard, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk, and then I'll do a quick wrap up, and then we'll vote. Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, a shout out to the inverted triangle. I missed seeing that. That was, I spent hours with Ms. Raymond back in the day, going through that and learning that. So it was great to see it up there again. Anyone who's considering running in the by-election, study that, please. For me, when I'll go back to the previous term around the MDP and the land use bylaw, like when we put that in, we knew it was going to be different. We knew it was going to have a few challenges, some unknowns that that we weren't going to be aware of. But to Councillor McCook's point, that we truly tried to be innovative to really encourage larger developers to come back, home builders to come back into Beaumont and encourage growth. And by and large, I think we did that. You know, there are a few tweaks that we needed to make, and yeah, I'm glad we went through this process. I think there's a few times where I was pretty frustrated up here, where a few councils were taking pot shots at zero lot lines, and I encouraged them to put a motion forward to let's discuss it and debate it, as opposed to just complaining about it. So we've done that, and I'm glad we have. A couple of points to stress: the link to transit is crucial. Looking forward to solving that coming up here, but also professional judgment. That was a comment that was made right at the start of this discussion. I really want to emphasize this. My role as a councillor, I don't believe is to tell people which houses they want to live in or which housing types developers think are going to sell. We got to look after parking concerns, etc. And I think we've met in the middle here, as it relates to zero lot lines. Or if I could today, I would pick up my house and move it to the edge of the eastern side of my lot. And obviously can't do that. But yeah, I don't think it's my role to tell people how they should live. And, yes, we need to protect them. And I think that's doing this. So all in all, really looking forward to seeing the public feedback on this. And we're going to come up with a good final update to the bylaw. So it's working, and excited that we've got some larger developers that are coming in here. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnard, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and the rest of council. I really do appreciate that. As a group, we're not just rubber stamping what we're saying. We're also looking at it again and sober second thought. But I also do appreciate that we're following up on previous plans that we worked long and hard on, whether it's the affordable housing plan, which I hold near and dear, and the age friendly and the social master plan. All of the things that we're talking about very much tie in there. And yeah, the land use bylaw is a very, very important piece of our legislation, but it's not the only piece. And we have a lot of other things that go along with that. And it's not the answer to all of our problems for sure, but it certainly is a foundational piece. So I appreciate we're continuing to go in the direction that we've worked really hard to get here. Beaumont's not changing, it is changing. Beaumont is not standing still. It's continuously growing. And this, as long as we continue to go in this direction, I think is holding us really ready for the future. And we're not trying to be just what we were in the past. We're trying to improve upon that and make it ready for the future citizens that are going to come. Our density has to increase. And we know that in this region, the need for housing is humongous. And we've done some recent studies at the Leduc Regional Housing Foundation, and we can't keep up no matter what we do. This is going to help, but it's not the answer either. So we just can't we can't just stop. We have to continue to look for innovative solutions. Yes, I agree. Need for transit. This again is another reason why we have to continue to move in that direction, and we are. And I guess the only other piece that occurred to me is that it's far easier to build on greenfield than it is within neighborhoods, existing neighborhoods. And I think that's some of the problems we've encountered. And I know that we will have homes that continue to be a challenge because of where they're being built. And I think we'll have to continue to deal with that. But that's what councils are for. So thank you. And thank you to the administration for getting us where we are. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newkirk. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll do my best not to repeat what others have said, but the practical reason we're here and having this discussion is because we said we would. Land use bylaw was created. It was new. It was innovative. Beaumont was trying something. We've received a bunch of feedback along the way. There's been a lot of passion involved. There's people who have been very patient for changes that are anticipated, and people care. And I know that because they continue to follow up. And so the practical reason we're here is because we said we would review it. Administration was committed to that. They are leading us through the process. As with many things, we wish it would happen sooner, but there's always good reason as to why it doesn't. The report that was put in front of us tonight, based on the recommendations we made, was great. Again, kudos to administration and the consultants for that. Like I said, I won't repeat what others have said. Yay to some bungalows, yay to transit. But contrary to those present and the public watching tonight, seeing me on the wrong side of 4 amending motions, I am going to support this motion and this work in front of us, because it's a culmination of way more than 4 pieces of detail that I tried to move the needle on tonight. So the work is greater than them 4 motions. So I will be supporting this in its entirety tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll have a quick comment before we go to the vote. I just want to say, first of all, thank you, Steve, for bringing those amendments forward. You didn't do very well in the vote count tonight, but you did help us think about the process, what we're talking about, what we're thinking about. This is legacy work. This is what we're here to do, is the big stuff that lasts for years. And this is hugely important work. Administration and our consultant did a fantastic job in this report. It gave us a lot to think about. We thought it through thoroughly. We debated it thoroughly, and we came to some good decisions tonight. And we have made some strides. Our land use bylaw a few years ago was a bit innovative. Was it perfect? No. We did a couple of tweaks tonight. That's a good thing. We have builders coming back to Beaumont. We have Sterling coming back to build houses in Beaumont. First time in years. Homes by Abbey, Ontario Homes, and Elan are building homes in Beaumont and been here for years. They're coming back to Beaumont. We're doing the right things. And again, thank you for your work this evening. Council, administration did a great job tonight. And with that, I will now ask us to proceed with the vote on the motion before you. And I'll repeat the motion that by December 31st, 2023, administration prepare a bylaw to amend bylaw 944-19, land use bylaw, in accordance with the summary table of changes as set out in attachment 3, September 2023 proposed land use bylaw amendments report. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, council, please vote on the motion before you. Council, that carries unanimously, 5-0. Thank you, council, administration, and again, thank you for your work. A lot of work, great report, good work, and I'm very happy we got through it this evening. And moving on to the next item. Ms. Bugeja, I believe you have an item for us on the upcoming by-election. With that, Ms. Bugeja, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and the rest of council. I'm Sandy Bugeja. Again, I'm the Director of Legal and Legislative Services, and I'll be co-presenting this item with Ms. Shalane Winter, our City Clerk. To get us started, I'm going to ask our CAO, Mr. Mike Schwartz, to just provide council with a very brief update on the recent councillor resignation.
Oh, Mr. Schwartz, sorry, your microphone is now on.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Bugeja. As for the MGA, it's my responsibility to inform the public and council of the recent resignation of Councillor Miller. We received that notification in writing this morning. So we wish her best of luck and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mike. Council, as you know, the city was set to hold a by-election to address another councillor vacancy that occurred when Renee Tessier resigned earlier this summer. Council had set the date of the by-election and the city's administration had started taking steps to run the election, including the required notices and advertising. With the timing of the second vacancy and the timing of the advertisements, we are unfortunately unable to add the second vacancy as part of the October 16th by-election. To avoid holding 2 separate by-elections, While still ensuring we meet all of our time-sensitive requirements, administration is recommending that council rescind the previous motion to set the by-election for October 16th, 2023, and pass a new motion to set the by-election for October 23rd, 2023.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor, through you to council and the public. The change will mean that the dates for the advance votes in the nomination period will also shift. Most importantly, the nomination period will be open until noon on September 25th, 2023. Administration has confirmed the availability of the required spaces for the election and the advance votes. Ultimately, administration feels that holding a single by-election for 2 vacant councillor positions is the best option for candidates and the community in general. If council supports this approach, council would need to rescind the July 11th motion that set the date for the by-election and pass a new motion to establish a new date. If the change is made, administration would undertake additional communication to the community and change and also directly communicate with everyone who has already submitted a nomination form.
Thank you, Shalane. So this concludes our very brief presentation. And of course, we're always happy to answer your questions. The only other comment I'll add is that tomorrow is actually our information session for candidates. So the timing was a little bit fortunate in that we have the opportunity to let the candidates know at that session and also address any questions they have procedurally. But as Shalane mentioned, we also will ensure that a communication goes out to everyone who's filed nomination forms so that everyone is clear on what's changed and how that impacts them.
Thank you, Ms. Bajia. With that, administration, thank you for your work today. I know it was a very bit of a harried day in terms of getting things done. The MGA has very specific rules regarding elections for obvious reasons. We're a democracy that follows the rules and makes sure people are elected fairly and appropriately. And there are definitely rules involved. Councilor Miller's timing on her resignation did cause the administration some concern with complying with the rules. And the Municipal Affairs Department gave us a latitude to look at rescinding our bylaw and moving the election forward in time to accommodate one election as opposed to 2 and save municipality a considerable amount of money and a lot of grief having a second election. So administration did a great job today getting this prepared for this evening. And I want to thank you for that effort today. I know it was a very, very busy day today, as I'm very much aware. And thank you for doing that. So with that, I'll have the motion placed on the screen if we could, please. I'll be pleased to make the motion that the July 11, 2023 motion 230703 motion to set a bylaw for October 16, 2023 be rescinded. Council discussion on the motion. Seeing none, council, I'll ask you to vote on the motion before you. That carries unanimously, 5-0. Thank you, council. With that, I'll ask for the motion you require to move this issue forward, please. That's a big one. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. I can read out the motion and we can do this all in one motion if that works for council.
It does work.
So that the October 23rd, 2023 be approved as the date for the new municipal by-election to fill the vacancy of 2 councillor positions. That advance vote dates on Wednesday, October 18th, Thursday, October 19th, 2023 for the municipal by-election be approved, and that the special ballot mail-ins be available and to eligible electors as prescribed in the Local Authorities Election Act, and that the receipt deadline for completed special ballots to the returning officer be approved no later than 4:30 p.m. on October 23rd, 2023, and that Shalane Winter be appointed as returning officer and Stacy Mead be appointed as substitute returning officer for the 2023 by-election.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Member Council willing to move the motion as read out. Councillor Barnhart.
Mayor, if I could, before I just want to clarify the October 23rd at what is that, the special ballots, is that so it goes right to the date? I thought maybe that would be in advance of, but
For the special, sorry, Councillor, for the special ballots?
Yeah, the special ballots, they can come right into the up until the end of, but voting ends at what, 7 o'clock on that day?
8 p.m. But we only accept the special ballots up until 4:30 p.m.
So you have a little bit, so I'm just, weeks of waiting could be hard.
Definitely,
It was a long time when the last election, we waited quite a long time.
Yeah, all of our special ballots that we've had for all our general elections and special have always come in at that time at 4:30 PM.
That's the time. Okay,
Correct.
just clarifying that. But I'm pleased to make the motion then.
Thank you, Counselor. Appreciate that. Members of council, discussion on the motion? See none. Council, please vote on the motion before you. Also carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you, council. Administration, again, thank you for your work today. It was a bit of a hairy day, but we got it done. And I'm very pleased. We only have one by-election as opposed to two for obvious reasons for everybody involved. So thank you very much for that. Next on our agenda is item 7, councilor inquiries, responses, and reports. I'm not aware of any councilor inquiries. Any councilor inquiries to be made this evening? Seeing none, thank you. Next on our agenda is CEO update. Mr. Schwartz, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I will speak really, really fast because I know it's been a long night and you've got accomplished a lot so far. So I got a few updates. First one is from Community and Social Development, the long-awaited Welcome Service Initiative, which launched in mid-October or mid-August. I mean, it's since it's launched, they have met with 13 new families who have made Beaumont their new home. So it's a popular service already, and I know Councilor Barnhart, that's close to your heart. FCS hosted the annual FCSS Awareness Barbecue in August. Over 300 residents came out to have a hot dog and meet with staff and learn about the programs and services that FCSS and the CSD department offer. Over 80 children attended programs hosted by FCSS during the summer. Beaumont kids had great fun and many day camps were waitlisted. Over 500 of our young children from 0 to 6 years old. I don't know how you have a child at 0, but I guess you do. And their parents enjoyed a variety of fun outdoor programs that come from you, Kimberly? The 0 idea? No. And activities hosted in partnership with the library and FCSS and in the Inglemont Church. Then they enjoyed some of the parks. Economic development and planning. Yeah, you can see that. I'll just skim through it. We participated for the first time in a North American strategy for competitiveness. Beaumont was invited to attend it. This gave us an opportunity to gain exposure across the country of the United States, Mexico, and Canada. So it's an annual conference located in a different place each year, and this year Edmonton Region hosted it. Legend Legal, I'm going to embarrass Shalane. Hopefully she didn't read this before then, but I would truly like to acknowledge that Shalane has obtained her certified municipal clerk designation through the International Institute of Municipal Clerks. This designation requires not just the commitment to education, but as well years of experience. So that was long in the making and a lot of hard work goes into it. And in the meantime, she's doing her job. So thank you. And you can kick me later, but that's why we have this thing in the middle. During this September, the city is celebrating our Right to Know Week, which runs from September 25th to October 1st. So this is raising awareness on the public's right to access government information. It's a lot of misnomers along those lines on what's public access, what they can have access to and what they can't. Part of promoting freedom of information is essential to democracy and good governance. So there's over 40 countries and 60 non-governmental organizations celebrating Right to Know Week. I didn't know we had a Right to Know Week.
Now you know.
But now I know. See? I learned already. Some set stats for recreation. You can see very, very busy fall. 260 program spots were filled for the community programs. You can see the revenues there. The winter 788 programs have been filled. Aquatics, over 1,000 programs spots were filled for the fall of 2023, and the winter programs are being filled as well. Had an overwhelming amount of interest in our programs as we do each year. This next item is a real good news story. A lot of collaboration went into it. The city has been working infrastructure mainly with Black Gold, and I'm sure engineering has been involved in it, and the Minor Football Association to enable them to host home games because they don't have change rooms. We got a beautiful facility there, but we don't have change rooms. So our new waste partner, which just started on September 1st, GFL, has graciously agreed to sponsor the rental of 4 change rooms by way of the 2 portable trailers for the fall season. So this will provide with the basic space for the teams to change and meet the requirements for the league. So we will be able to host league games for the first time here. There will be a formal recognition and celebration plan to coincide with the first home game. More to come, but thank you very much, GFL and our recreation folks and Minor Football and Black Gold School. 50th Street lane closures were related to Le Havre being delayed a little bit due to due to the weather, the rain off and on. But that work's going pretty good. If you drive up and down there, I think they've got it separated, and it's there's very little to no delays. So they're doing really well. The alley renewal work at St. Vital is wrapping up. Hallelujah. The gas line's been lowered, and regrading and paving of the alleyway is almost complete. You didn't think I knew that word, did you? Okay, I did. I looked it up. Next steps are the driveway blending and landscaping. The project was planned to be completed later this September, and we appreciate everybody's patience in that neighborhood. We've had 2 years back to back of renewal. Been a lot of work done in that, and they're going to enjoy it once it's done and we're out of there. So the renewal works progressing. Centreville Park construction fencing is up, and we have construction starting this week on the park revitalization. That's going to be very exciting. It's going to make that council issuing that design, and it's going to make that little pocket corner there look really, really good. So again, we ask our residents to be patient and to stand by, and it's going to be a work of art. Bellevue Phase 2 is progressing well. The underground servicing, 50th Street wrapped up, and paving for the parking lot complete. We've really put the pressure on the contractor to get in and out of there before school started. They did a pretty good job considering they had a late start in the season. So the rest should be wrapped up here. And then Range Road 241 and Township Road 510 overlays. The project's been awarded, and we expect the work to begin mid-September with completion planned for the fall. So let's hope for some good weather. So we'll, as always, communicate the road closures and the end of the season spray park. I just don't like reading that sentence. It's almost as bad as the ice is going in at Ken Nickel. I hate saying all of those things. Anyway, that occurred on Monday, September 4th. I think the kids had a fantastic year. It was a very hot, dry summer. And that's all I had. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Schwartz. Any questions for our CEO? I see Sam and I see Steve. Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and appreciate the update. Just a question around the Centreville Park and the work that's happening there. I'm sure a new designation for our city clerk is going to slap my hand, so I'll try to get away with it and see if she lets me. But there's some chatter going around about shade and not providing not enough budget to complete the shade, and installing some shade as requested from council here. I think the mayor sent a note on it. So is there a way that we could have this discussion? And ultimately, I'd rather use the efficiencies of the one construction season if there was additional budget that was required, and we could provide that now. I'd rather do that than go back later. Is there an ability to do that?
And I'm just relaying off of our deputy here. We're bringing a report back next week to council to have the discussion on whether it comes into 2024 capital or whether in fact we do that.
Okay, so short answer is I'm hearing yes. Talk about it
Yes,
next week.
Tuesday next week.
Okay, sorry about
Did I
that.
say
Thank you.
anything correct there? Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate that. Councilor Newkirk. Steve, you have the floor for questions.
Yeah, just comments actually. Regarding Bellevue, they did they weren't done, but they did a really good job of like staying out of the way on, on the handoff day. And then they were there bright and early, Saturday morning, troweling cement and doing what they needed to. So yeah, they weren't done, and I wish they would have been, and we all wish they would have been, but I think it was as unobtrusive as possible. I would say. And I did see a surveyor out on the eastern side of Beaumont today with some sticks. So, get ready for some disruption, but a nice road on the back end of it. So
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And as CEO Schwartz mentioned, Shalane, congratulations on your certified municipal clerk designation. It was a lot of work, a lot of class time. I know we talked about a couple of times the last couple of years about the course you're working on, and you finally accomplished it. So very good for you. Our congratulations on that achievement. No other questions for CEO Schwartz? Seeing none, next on our agenda is notice of the motion. Any NOMs this evening from members of council? If we're seeing none, just a quick thing. Again, council, great work this evening. A lot of got done this evening. A little clunky at times, but we got through it. I do appreciate your patience working through the process. Having seen no other announcements, I think we're adjourned at 8:53. Enjoy your evening. Thank you. See you next Tuesday.